The wind blustered through the man-made canyons of the city, driving the morose rain before it, soaking the cuffs of my trousers. The reflection of the sad street light struggled out of a muddy puddle in the road. As I trudged this soggy street, a bedraggled cat hissed at my feet from the equally soggy pile of cardboard that littered the sidewalk. This was 5th Street, not 5th Avenue, and 2 in the morning wasn't a good time to be here, but work is work. In the distance, a trumpet wailed its sorrow into the night. The note in my pocket had said to follow that sound. I turned my head from side to side, trying to decide from which direction it came. Eventually, I turned right into an even more depressing alley, and the trumpet was joined by a double bass, drums, guitar, and piano. From what I could hear of the notes that fought their way to my ears through the other night sounds, the band wasn't half bad. A flickering red neon led me to a bar at the very end of the alley. Pushing the door open, I entered a world of stale cigar smoke, of stale beer smells, and the sounds of despair. The trumpet player took his instrument from his lips and began to sing in a voice that told of too many cigarettes, too much bad whiskey, and too much sadness. The raw emotion rode through his music like the freight train that he rode away from the hard times in New Orleans or Chicago, and the small crowd sat in rapt silence while he sang, lost in his lament. I grabbed a stool at the bar. "What's your poison?" The woman behind the bar matched the ambience of this place. Her once blonde hair tinted yellow by the smoke. Her once pretty face scarred by age, a hard life, and a lack of sleep. The only thing that seemed to have survived the ravages of time was her figure, or at least the part of it that I was allowed to see. "Whiskey, straight up?" I slapped a 2 spot on the bar. "You want change, or are you going to work your way through that? Keep him coming. I don't suppose you can tell me where I can find Laura Lee Jones?" She served me an extra shot of whiskey and passed the glass to me along with my money. "You found her. You must be Jerry." I took a business card from my pocket and passed it over. "This card says I am, and it's my card, so I guess I am." I took a swig of the whiskey and wished I hadn't. I hated to think of the damage this was going to do to my guts on the way through. Phew. I winced to show my displeasure. "When was this made? Yesterday?" "Stick around. The band will be finishing their set in 10 minutes or so, and then the crowd will clear out and we can talk. Why don't you take a load off in that booth over there?" Her nod indicated a booth occupied by a woman who looked as if she too had seen better days. I slid in opposite this thing and put my glass down. A quivering hand reached out and grabbed it. The glass rattled against her teeth as her unsteady hand tilted it up, emptying it in one gulp. "Help yourself, why don't you?" "I just did." "Got a butt?" I shook a Camel out of the pack for her, and one for myself. She grabbed it like it was her last, and didn't even bother to tap it on the table to tamp the tobacco before she stuffed it between her lipstick-smeared lips. I took the Zippo out of my jacket and torched hers before I lit mine. Snapping it shut, I tried to ignore her. "You looking for some action?" "Nah, I gave it up for Lent." We sat in silence, each lost in our own separate world, me thinking about what Laura Lee wanted from me and she, well, I couldn't tell what world she inhabited. The band finished their set and put down their instruments. The fact that they weren't packing them away tells me that they were coming back soon, or that this was their regular gig. Regular gig won out. The customers shuffled out as the band moved over to the bar for one last free drink before heading out to wherever. My companion stood shakily to her feet. "You sure you don't want to take me home?" "Sorry, sweetheart, but I've got to get home to the little lady." It was a lie, but she wasn't to know that. In fact, in an hour, she will have forgotten all about me. Laura Lee locked the door and came and sat down in the booth. "I see you hit it off with Sadie." She put another glass of whiskey in front of me. "That's to replace the one she took." "You did that on purpose, didn't you?" I held it to my nose. It didn't singe my nose hairs, so I knew it was a different batch to the other stuff. Probably last week's. I took a sip and it slid down smoothly. "Nice. Private stock, is it?" "Yeah. I keep this for special clients." "How can I help you?" "I want you to find my no-good husband." I could tell by the tone of her voice that there was no love lost between her and her missing husband. "I gather that you would prefer it if he came up dead." "You gather right, but that's not to say you should kill him if you find him alive." The no-good son of a bitch was not only stealing money from me, but he was putting it about with just about anyone, and he didn't care if I knew it. He even screwed your friend that just left. "You're kidding me, right?" "No." I went out into the alleyway out back to toss some trash in the dumpster, and there he was, with a 304. I got the picture. "When was the last time you saw him?" "Right after I chucked him out the door Monday last week." I had just had a visit from a couple of very big and mean-looking guys who told me they were collecting on behalf of one of the local bookies. It seems he was into them for several grand, and these guys suggested that if he didn't pay up, and soon, he would regret it. "I don't suppose you know the name of this bookie, do you?" "Benny someone or other. I didn't quite get the last name if in fact they mentioned it, but I gather he is big time. They don't come much bigger. There's a good chance your husband is currently feeding the sharks at the bottom of the ocean, and I don't mean that he's down there with a copper ball over his head, holding out lumps of halibut for them either. If he is, can you prove it? Probably not, but I might get lucky, you never know. I don't suppose you filed a missing persons report? I did, but it's probably not much use. They didn't seem terribly interested, especially after I told them that he owed Benny money. I figure they came to the same conclusion you did. I'll call by tomorrow night to let you know how my investigation is getting on. I got up and walked out into a night of misery. It had come to this. Tony Good, my ex-partner, had left to set up his own agency about 6 months ago, taking my ex-wife with him. He was the money man of the Pretty Good detective agency, discretion guaranteed. I am the pretty part, and before you come up with a smart-arsed remark about the name, let me tell you I've heard them all. I was the poor schmuck who did all the detecting. I drew wages and he drew what was left. That wasn't the deal when we started out, but after he left I found out that he had done a damn sight better from the business than I had. I went home and grabbed a couple of hours shut-eye before hitting the pavements. It didn't take long for me to find out that my man had run up a large tab with several bookies and was stalling for time, hoping for the big payout so that he could clear his debts. Like all gambling fools, he had lost sight of the fact that his chances of that big payout was on the same level as a snowball's chance of survival in hell. I got the impression that Benny had lost patience with him, and I knew what that meant. All I had to do was prove it. So I paid a visit to Benny. My first hurdle was to get by the goon at the front door of Benny's office. "Wait, you want?" He made the Neanderthal man look intelligent. "I wish to see your boss." Straightforward enough request, I thought. The boss ain't seeing no one, so shove off. I hit him with a hard right to the bread basket that doubled him over, followed by a swift knee to the face. He stood there with blood streaming from his nose and a bewildered look on his ugly face. He thought about having a slug at me. A minute later, he had a second thought and decided against it. "Why don't you be a good person and go and speak to your boss? All you have to do is tell him that Jerry Pretty would like a chat." I could hear him muttering my name over and over as he left. After several minutes, he came back. "The boss'll see ya." He looked hurt, but like a good boy, he let me by. I didn't knock. "Hiya, Benny. Long time no see." I held out my paw for him to shake. He ignored it and nodded towards a chair. "What do you want?" He made it sound as if I was wasting my time even talking to him, which I probably was. "Didn't you used to be pretty good?" "I'm still pretty good," asked Neanderthal man at the front door. "I'm looking for one of your clients who's gone missing. You wouldn't happen to know where Andy Jones is, would you?" "Why would I? I don't get involved with petty hustlers like him." "I didn't ask if you know him. What I asked was if you know where he is." "What makes you think I'd know where he is?" "I would hazard a guess that he has met an untimely death and is shark bait. I could be wrong, mind you. But it seems that when anyone owes you as much as he did, they seem to end up that way. Or at least there are rumors to that effect." "Wise guy, aren't you?" "Okay, let's just say that I know what happened to him, but I don't know where he is." "You should ask your ex-partner about that." "Why? What has he got to do with this?" "He was contracted to carry out the hit, and I won't say who requested it, and dispose of the body." I thanked him for his information and left, getting a nasty stare from the gorilla at the door. For fun, I shaped as if to have another shot at him, and he cowered against the wall. Benny will probably have to look for another goon. My next port of call was at the new, swish, modern office of my former partner. His receptionist looked familiar. After all, I had been married to her for several years. "You look great, doll. Now can I have a chat to Tony?" Her real name was Dolores, but I'd squeezed it down to doll, and she hated me for that, among other things. The look that she gave me told me that she still couldn't stand my efforts at humor. She flicked a switch on the gizmo on her desk. I'd get one for myself if I had someone to flick the switch, and his voice came through the speaker. "Yes, sweetheart. What is it?" "Jerry is here and wants to speak to you." "Send him in." I went in and found him sitting at his desk, trying to look as if he was flat out with work. I knew better, and it didn't fool me. "What do you want?" he said angrily. I don't know why he should be angry with me. I didn't walk out on him and take his wife with me. I didn't take the company's client records with me, thinking that I had all of the business sewn up, and I'm not having to live with the fact that the clients remained loyal to me, and when he called on them, they told him to shove his agency up his butt. "Nice place you've got here. Must be costing you a fortune, more than you're earning. But even I didn't think that you'd even sink so low as to do Benny's dirty work for him." "What do you mean?" "I understand that you took Andy Jones for a ride and fed him to the fishes." "Who told you that?" I noticed that he didn't deny it. "A little canary sang an interesting song." "Why are you telling me this? What's in it for you?" "I figured that I'm due for a big payout." "Is this blackmail?" "No, I've got bigger fish to fry, if you'll pardon the pun. I could have stayed a little longer exchanging witty repartee, but I couldn't be bothered wasting my time. I left him there puzzling about my next move. I wouldn't keep him in suspense long. I called in to see my friend Lieutenant Calloway at the precinct house. I copped the usual bullshit from the troops as I walked through the squad room. Who's the pretty boy then? Didn't you used to be pretty good? Now you're no good. Crap like that. I hear it every time I come into the station. Hey Lou, did you ever find Andy Jones? Lou was staring at a file on his desk, a dead cigar hanging from his lips, and a mug of tepid coffee feeling neglected beside his hand. No, we figured if we ever found him there would be so little left of him that he'd be just another John Doe with no means of identification. What do you know? Lou would have been good looking if fate hadn't stepped in. His face bore the scars of a few too many hits from his college boxing days, his bouts with the bottle and his worries about the fidelity of the woman who calls herself his wife. His wife, and she still was in the legal sense, got tired of waiting for him to stagger home after a day of saving the world from itself and being too tired to perform his conjugal duties, so she took to finding relief elsewhere, the knowledge of which found its way to Calloway's attention. He would have divorced her if he could be bothered, and she didn't want a divorce because he brought home a regular paycheck, which was more than could be said for many of her lovers. I don't know where he is, but I do know who took him there, and probably rubbed him out as well. I think you should go take a look in Tony's Chevy. If you look around in the trunk you might find some blood which will probably match Andy's blood type. What makes you think your old partner had anything to do with this? Business hasn't been all that good for him lately, and he needs money badly enough to do this job for Benny. If you can finger him for it, you might get Benny as well, so lean on him a little and he'll squeal like a stuck pig. Sure thing. I knew that Lou had been trying to pin some sort of rap on Benny for a long time, but every time he thought he had him, Benny showed up with his lawyer and a whole bunch of people who were prepared to swear on a stack of Bibles that Benny, the upright citizen, was somewhere else at the time the crime was committed. I walked the 5 blocks from the station house to my office, pausing just long enough to grab a cup of what the street vendor laughingly described as coffee and a paper from the newsstand. I glanced at the headlines, but nothing grabbed my attention, so I folded it and stuffed it under my arm. There would be plenty of time to read it in detail back at the office. I was good at what happened next. I opened the door, and as I walked into the front office, I took off my hat and threw it in the general direction of the hat stand. As usual, it stuck, but as I took off my coat, I found myself grabbed from behind. That's not usual. A voice came from the stuffed chair I had thoughtfully provided, back in the days when I had a partner and a wife in reception, for clients to rest comfortably while they waited for me to attend to them. Very well done. A man of some skill. Nigel, you may release Mr. Pretty. As I was released, I turned to face the man who had held me. Nigel? The Neanderthal was called Nigel? The irony of this revelation took me by surprise to the point that I almost missed the telegraph message that came just before the punch was thrown. Like I said, I almost missed it, unfortunately for the ponderous Nigel. I hit him low down in the body and, as he lurched forward, chopped him with a looping left to the jaw. He went down like a poleaxed steer, and I filed away in my memory that Nigel had a glass jaw. What do you want, Benny? A word to the wise, Mr. Pretty. A word to the wise. After our little meeting this morning, I couldn't help but ask, why would you be interested in the whereabouts of a loser such as Andy Jones? Could it be that his wife, the beautiful Laura Lee, had hired you to find him? Or could it be that she hired you to confirm that he was no longer among us, having retired to that track in the sky where every horse is a winner? Or could there be another, very dangerous for me, reason? I told myself that I should call by just to reassure myself that you were no threat to my operations. Reassure me, Mr. Pretty. This was a whole different Benny to the surly bookie that I confronted earlier this morning. He was positively loquacious, he was positively polite, and he was positively scary. I hated it when people who could harm me were polite. It usually meant that I was in danger of being harmed. A smack in the head I could understand. That was the language of the streets where I lived. But this was alien, and I had this premonition that I was going to be harmed, and soon, if I made a wrong move. If you must know, I have been hired to found him, dead or alive. So be it. I must, however, warn you that if ever I should hear that you are encroaching on my territory, my vengeance will be swift and total. Do I make myself clear? Sure. I won't even ask if it was you or one of the other of several bookies that Andy owed money to who had him stiffed. I'm glad that you didn't ask. You have saved me the bother of lying to you. He stood. It was the first time I had ever seen him erect, and for a big man he was surprisingly short, no more than 5 feet tall. My attention was on Benny as he walked to the door, and it wasn't until I heard the slight noise behind me that I realized the danger I was in. The lights went out, and I didn't hear Benny tell Nigel that he shouldn't have done that. Gee, sorry boss, I thought you wanted him roughed up. That thought was about 5 minutes too late. In future, you don't hit someone unless I tell you to. I can't have you thinking for yourself. I don't know whether I was awake or not, but there was a ringing in my ears. As consciousness returned, I realized that it was the telephone making a racket on the desk. I crawled over and grabbed the cord. The phone came off the desk and must have hit me on the head because when I woke up again, I thought I was dead and gone to heaven. My head was resting in a beautiful and soft lap, and my brow was being wiped by a soft, damp cloth held in a beautiful hand. An angelic voice wafted down from above. Are you all right? I can't hear any harp music, but I must be in heaven. It was the best that I could think of at the time. What happened to you? I came past your door and found you laying there on the floor. Are there any truck tire marks on the carpet left by the 18-wheeler that ran me down? You must be feeling better. Your sense of humor has returned. I never lost it. In this business, if you take life too seriously, it will grind you into an early grave. Do you think you can stand up? I'll need some assistance. She was a tall, slender blonde, and all of her bumps were in the right place. She smelt really nice. Unlike the cheap dime store scent used by the women that I usually met. She was also strong, and I found myself almost being lifted bodily by this angel. Of course, I had to stagger a little as I got to my feet, and of course, she had to hold me more firmly. I was in heaven. She led me to the chair recently occupied by Benny. I sat down gratefully, and she walked away from me, out of my door and out of my life. I was in the middle of feeling sorry for myself when she walked back through the door and back into my life. The angel of mercy had returned with 2 paper cups of coffee. She walked past me into my office to return a moment later with the flask that I kept in my top drawer for special occasions. Take a sip. Yes, ma'am. I obeyed, and she topped my cup up with whiskey from the flask. I decided I liked this person more and more. She put the flask on the reception desk and sat on the arm of my chair. Wow, that's a huge lump you have on your head. It's no wonder you thought you'd been hit by a truck. Who did this to you? It was a truck called Nigel. Nigel? Now that has really smashed my preconceptions. All of the Nigels that I have met have had difficulty holding their hands straight because they have had no real strength in their wrists. This particular Nigel is around 6 feet 20, 250 pounds, and an intelligence that wouldn't bother the scorer at an IQ test. Now the important question. Who are you, and what were you doing walking past my door? My name is Lucy Jones. My mother, Laura Lee Jones, hired you to find my father. I was actually looking for you, and the reason I walked past your door was because it was open and I didn't see the sign on it the first time. It was only when I came back that I saw you on the floor, and when I came in I saw the sign. You could at least have it rewritten instead of just taping some paper over the other name on it. I must admit to some confusion here. Laura Lee didn't look old enough to have a daughter Lucy's age, although the lighting when I met her could have confused me, and Lucy looked far too old to be Laura Lee's daughter, unless she was the result of the Bible Belt breeding cycle. What do you know about your father's disappearance? I knew that he had financial problems. There was nothing particularly new in that. Ever since I went to college, he would ring me asking for money. Mom wouldn't give him any more, so he figured he could tap me for some of the allowance that Mom gave me. If I could, I would help, but a couple of weeks ago I couldn't, and he sounded really desperate. He begged me to see if I could get an advance on my allowance, but I couldn't do that because my next allowance was already committed to books and tuition. So you told him no? He sounded as if he was crying over the phone. I couldn't tell if he was genuine or it was just an act, but I was really tired of him ringing me begging for money, so I got my roommate to answer it for me and tell him I wasn't there so he couldn't do it anymore. The last time I spoke to Mom, I asked for an advance. She wasn't happy when I told her why. I couldn't lie to her because she was always able to see through my attempts at lying to her, so I gave up. You're close to your mother, aren't you? Yes, we are very much alike, and I admire her for what she has achieved with her life. She has really had to struggle, you know. She was married young, and I believe that it was because of me that she married, unless of course I was 6 months premature. No, she didn't tell me that, but I came across her marriage certificate among some papers I was looking through, and I can do basic math. She worked hard to make ends meet because my father was always broke. He didn't work much. He couldn't keep a job for long. So he began gambling to try to make money, but more often than not he lost it. Mom got a job working in the bar, and she ended up running the business and doing it so well that when the owner retired, he sold it to her for a very reasonable price. Pop accused Mom of having an affair with him, but I knew that couldn't be true. Mom wasn't like that. Did your father work there too? If what he did could be called work. He used to strut around behind the bar serving drinks, but he probably gave more away than he sold, especially to the women. At nights when Mom needed him most, he would disappear for hours at a time. Mom eventually caught him having sex with one of the regulars out back in the alley, so she threw him out. Which just about brings us up to now. Yes. Do you think that you can find him? It looks highly unlikely that I will ever find him alive. The person who dealt the cowardly blow to the back of my head is a goon who works for one of the bookies your father owed money to, and Benny, that's the bookie, all but admitted that he was behind your father's disappearance. If that's the case, well, let's put it this way. When Benny makes people disappear, they stay disappeared. Are you satisfied that Benny had my father killed? Why do you ask? What if he is taking credit for the hit just to bolster his reputation? Well, then I sure as hell wouldn't want to tell him he's lying. Can you think of anyone else who wanted him dead? The line forms on the right, babe. You can take your pick. If I didn't know better, I should even include your mother. She wouldn't lose too much sleep if he turned up dead. Where do we go from here? What do you mean, we, white girl? I want to help. I want to be there when the answer is found, whatever that is. It could get nasty. We're not dealing with the organizers of a Sunday school picnic here. I'm a big girl. I'll take my chances. Speaking of big, just how old are you? I'm 20. I'll be 21 next month. How old is Laura Lee? I wouldn't have put her much past 40. Good guess. She has only just turned 40, although I wouldn't mention that to her. She's a little sensitive about that milestone. What do you like at rustling up some more coffee? When I said help, I meant the real thing, not just running errands. Okay, you stay here and I'll get the coffee. How do you like yours? I'm sorry, I'll get the coffee. How do you like yours? Black, strong with 3 sugars. Actually, if you get from the delicatessen downstairs, just tell them it's for me. They know how I like it. When she returned, it had taken longer than I thought it would. She had this strange look on her face. I've been having an interesting conversation with the people downstairs. You've had a hard time of it of late, haven't you? You can't believe everything that you're told, especially not from those gossip mongers. Your partner left and took your wife with him? That must have hurt? Yeah, it did. Now can we drop the subject? All right, consider it dropped. Now what do we do? Are we going out to rough someone up to get him to talk? You've been reading too many dime store novels for your own good. It doesn't work that way. It's usually just a lot of boring foot slogging. Okay then, let's go. Yeah, boss, right, boss? Anything you say, boss. Just how high would you like me to jump, boss? Sorry, that's what comes from being my mother's daughter. I took my coffee and walked into my office and sat down. By the time Lucy had thought about it and followed me, and I had taken a notepad from my top drawer and was making a list. What's that? Lucy asked, pointing to the list. My grocery shopping for the week. No, it's a list of what I know, what I suspect, and what I need to confirm before I venture forth. Oh, what do you know for sure? Monday 2 weeks ago, your mother caught your father in a compromising position with the beautiful Sadie and decided that she'd had enough of him, so she threw him out. This was just after she had a visit from a couple of Benny's thugs demanding money with menaces. Since then, nothing has been known of his whereabouts or whether he is in fact still with us. I know that he is, in all probability, dead, and if that is the case, I know who it was that would have carried out the dastardly deed. What I don't know is where the body is, that is if there is one, who ordered the hit, although our friend Benny is the prime suspect for that, and just how he met his untimely demise. What I need to confirm is the identity of the person who ordered the hit, where the body is if there is one, if not where the elusive Andy is now. It could be that he is lying low with one of his lady friends. In fact, that would be a good place to start. A trip to see Laura Lee for some directions, I think. I locked the door behind us and we walked down to the stairs. Why don't we use the elevator? This way is quicker. Once on the pavement, I began looking for a cab. One thing that is certain in this world is that when you need a cab to get somewhere, there is never one around, and by the time I saw one cruising towards us, it would have been a waste of time hailing. If we were that close to our destination. Don't you have a vehicle of your own? No, they are too much trouble in this part of town. You can never find a park when you need one, and even if you do, you would be very lucky to find your wheels still on it when you returned. The bar was open, so we went inside. There was a layer of smoke drifting through the room. It hadn't quite filled the space between floor and ceiling. Give it time. What are you doing here? I was just about to come up with some sort of witty riposte when I realized that the question was directed at Lucy. Why aren't you at college? I had to come and see what was happening. Pop hadn't called asking for money in over a week, and then you tell me that he is missing, but you didn't seem concerned about him. I found out that Jerry was helping out, so I want to see if I could help in any way. It was just as well. I found him unconscious on his floor. Someone had taken a dislike to him. I'm not paying good money for your tuition to have you drop out of college. Don't worry. I'm up to date with my assignments, so I can take some time off. What have you found out? My turn to speak. I can safely say that Benny knows more about this than he cares to admit. If he is responsible, I know that my former partner is somehow involved, and I can't wait to pin something on him. Apart from that, I can't prove anything at this stage, so I just keep looking. I don't suppose you know the address, or where I can find his friend Sadie, do you? There's a rooming house just around the corner that she uses during the day. They rent rooms by the hour, but she has a long-term deal probably involving favors to the caretaker, so she stays there full-time. I wasn't looking forward to this, but I went anyway. There was an alleged man who answered my knock on the door marked caretaker in the foyer. Go easy on the door, will ya? I'm looking for Sadie. Aren't they all? Room 6 upstairs. I wasn't depressed when I got here, but I was by the time I reached her door. I hesitated for a couple of minutes before knocking. I could hear a shuffling noise from the other side. It was getting closer. There must have been at least 4 locks on the door, and eventually it opened a couple of inches. What do you want? I want to ask you a few questions. Can I come in? The door opened up fully in answer to my request, and I followed her into her room. There was a double bed against the wall, and it looked as if the bed linen hadn't had the benefit of soap and water for some time. Over by the window there was a table and 2 chairs. On the table was a pile of dirty dishes, several glasses with the remains of drinks in the bottom, an ashtray overflowing with ash and dog ends of cigarettes. To complete the picture, the room had a smell about it that turned my stomach. How anyone could contemplate any involvement with this person in this place was beyond me, and believe me, I had seen some pretty disgusting places in my time. You know Andy Jones, don't you? Who? Andy Jones. From the bar around the corner where you were drinking last night. I don't remember last night. You got caught by his wife screwing in the back alley a couple of weeks ago. Shit, I would have screwed dozens of men since then. You don't expect me to remember that far back? If you do happen to see him or remember anything about him, or where he is at, let Laura Lee know at the bar. She can get a message to me. I was going to give her my business card but decided that it would be a waste of time. She'd probably lose it, beside which the nearest pay phone was further away than the bar. I walked back to the bar. I was almost going to go back to the office but figured that this would upset Lucy, and it would be good to have assistance with this investigation. Mother and daughter had overcome the tension of their meeting, and were both working behind the bar. I had hardly slid onto the stool when they both descended on me. Laura Lee pausing just long enough to pour both of us a double from the bottle of good stuff under the bar. She slid mine across to me. Where's mine? Lucy asked. You're too young to drink. I've drunk before. In this place you will not be served a drink until you're 21. Do you think I want to lose my license? Lucy, how did you know that I was looking for your father? I went to the police and spoke with Lieutenant Calloway, and he told me that you had been in asking questions this morning, and he told me where your office was. By the way, he said to tell you that your ex-partner isn't happy with you after they impounded his car. Boo-hoo to him. I'm not about to lose sleep over him. There was a meet at the local TAC today, so I thought that I could kill several birds with the one stone by attending. I also thought that it would do my reputation no harm at all to be seen with a gorgeous young thing called Lucy, so I invited her along. Where are we going and what are we going to do? We're going to the track where all of the self-respecting bookies hang out. We will wend our way to the mounting yard where they congregate to check out the horses before the off. The track was crowded for a midweek meeting, and we had to force our way though the punters to get to the mounting yard. We stopped just inside the entrance and I pointed out the bookies to her. That guy in the dark pinstripe and the snappy hat is Four-Finger Freddy. He had a disagreement with a pair of bolt cutters wielded by a goon working for the man over there in the camel hair overcoat. One Miklos Theodopoulos aka Mickey the Greek. Over there hiding behind my new best friend Nigel is Benny. Don't let his size fool you. He is one mean son of a bitch. It doesn't pay to cross him. Just ask your father if we ever find him alive. Benny was deep in conversation with his trainer. He's probably discussing whether to pull his horse to get better odds next time up or let it run on its merits today. Are you trying to tell me that the races are fixed? You got it, and that is why the mug punters don't win. They don't stand a chance. But isn't that cheating? It's called tilting the odds in your favor. Now there's someone we should have a chat to, I said, pointing to a well-dressed woman casting a knowing eye over the runners. That lady is Sophie Lawrence. Her husband is one of the top trainers, but she is the brains of the team. She can spot a horse that's performance has been chemically enhanced one way or the other. I wouldn't go as far as to suggest that her husband educated her in the finer points of equine pharmacology, but what she doesn't know about doping isn't worth knowing. I think a chat is called for. I led the way to where Sophie was watching the last-minute preparations. Hiya, Sophie. Which horse should I stay right away from? Jerry Pretty. Long time no see. I thought that you were smarter than to hang around the track. It's a sucker's game. I know. Don't worry, I'm not here to lose what little money I have on the roulette wheel of equine endeavor. I just thought that I should come over and pass the time with the most important person here. Get to the point, Jerry. What do you want from me? You keep your ear to the ground. I'm looking for Andy Jones who, it appears, owes several of our bookmaking fraternity large sums of money. I'm tossing up whether he has gone to ground somewhere, or he's currently shark bait. Have you heard anything? Sorry, lover, I can't help you. If I was him and in his position, I would have been long gone. Mexico has a certain attraction for those who don't want to be found. Just a suggestion, but you never heard it from me. I hope the connections of Black Prince have paid the stewards to test yesterday's sample, because any taken after he wins will show positive, and you never heard that from me either. See ya, Jerry. She gave me a peck on the cheek and walked off. You seem very friendly with her. Lucy was watching Sophie's back, looking for a place to put the knife. You're not jealous, are you? We've known each other less than a day. I'm not jealous. I'm just making sure that you keep your mind on the job. Now, are we going to place a bet on Black Prince? If I want to eat tonight, I guess that I'd better. So we joined the queue, just making it in time before the off to get my fortune on Black Prince to win. We walked outside and made our way to the finish line. My money finished a good 10 lengths in front of the next horse. Where are you taking me tonight? Lucy was hanging off my arm as if I was the Shah of Persia. I hadn't even counted the notes before I shoved them into my pocket. As we left the track, I checked to make sure that my packet had remained unpicked and headed for the office, stopping for coffee at the downstairs delicatessen. Good to see that you're not mortally injured, Mr. Pretty. Maury Schwartz, the owner, greeted me as we entered. I was certain that you would have been in hospital for some time when this beautiful young lady told us that you had been badly assaulted. I guess I've just got a hard head, Maury. It comes in handy in my line of work. Lucy was looking over the pastries in the display counter. She is a very beautiful girl, no? She is a very beautiful girl, yes? She is also very much too young for me to even think about. Mr. Pretty, you should never stop thinking about such things. Touching is another matter. Please, may I have a couple of these pastries? Lucy was pointing at some pastries that would send my blood sugar levels through the roof. Certainly, my dear. Are they just for you, or do you want enough for Mr. Pretty as well? Sufficient for both of us. Then 4 it should be. He picked 4 from the display and placed them in a bag. I noticed that Lucy made no attempt to pay him, so I had to peel off some more money from my winnings. When are we going to Mexico? Lucy was sitting on my desk, her stocking-clad legs dangerously close to my hands, fingering cream from the side of her mouth and sucking it off her finger. The way that she sucked her finger had me disturbed. This was not something taught in the best schools. Who said we were going to Mexico? I thought that the lady at the track, who you forgot to introduce me to, by the way, as much as told you that that was where Dad was hiding. She was just saying that if he was smart, and someone who owes bookies as much as he does hardly qualifies as smart, that would be where he could possibly be hiding. It was a long way from telling me that he was definitely there. But you will try to find him, won't you? Look, Lucy, Mexico is a big place full of people who don't speak English and call us gringos. What makes you think that they would help us find him? We could start by going to the racetracks to see if he was there. Possibly, but I think that we should explore all lines of inquiry here before we think of traipsing off to sunny Mexico. Now, next item on the agenda. If I am to take you to some ritzy restaurant for dinner, you may need to change and possibly freshen up a little. I have my pride, you know, and I don't want to be seen squiring a young lady, pretty as you are, who has the appearance of just stepping off a Greyhound from LA. So where are you staying? I haven't checked in anywhere yet. So you're not staying with your mother then? Hell no. Much as I like my mother, one of the reasons that I went to an interstate college was to get away from her. She's fine in small doses, very small doses. I thought that, seeing as we're working together, you would put me up at your place. That's out of the question. Aside from the moral issue of having a young girl staying in my apartment, there's the fact that you're my client's daughter. What would she say to that arrangement? She doesn't need to know. What if she asks? I'll tell her that I'm staying at the White. I'll give Lucy this. For a pushy broad, she's fun to be with. We went to my apartment, and I waited while she did what she had to do in the bathroom, and then I hit the shower. I was just lathering up the important bits when I heard her come into the bathroom. Sorry, but I forgot something. I could see her take a quick look at me before turning away and leaving the room. One part of me was feeling disturbed again, while another part was hoping that she was impressed with what she saw. I'm going to have to stop having these thoughts. After her primping, she looked stupendous and out of the league of the bar and grill I was going to take her to. So I had to change my plans quickly and call a restaurant that owed me a favor and make a reservation. She was no slouch when it came to eating. She reached across the table and took a couple of fries from my plate, stuffing them into her mouth like she was sucking a. I'm really going to have to stop having these thoughts. Tell me about your ex-partner. Did he really run off with your wife? Yeah, they apparently had been lovers for some time. While I was out detecting, he was in my wife. They're now getting everything that they deserve. Their business isn't as profitable as they had hoped. Is that why you told Lieutenant Calloway that he was mixed up in Dad's disappearance? Partly. It gave me great pleasure thinking about him squirming while the cops tore his car apart. I hope that they found something. Do you speak to your ex? As little as possible, just enough to make her feel guilty. Let's change the subject. You're in college, right? Yeah. Mother insisted that I should get an education, so that I didn't end up working in some sleazy bar like she did. So how is it going? Good. I'm ahead on my course assignments and my grades are good too. I bet that you have lots of friends. No, not really. I spend most of my time studying, so I don't have time for friends. No boyfriends then? No, I have had the odd one or two. Not at the same time, of course. I'm not that sort of girl. What about lovers? You're not going to tell me that you're still a virgin, are you? No, I'm not still a virgin, and you can blame one of my professors for that. He convinced me that I needed extra tuition. Unfortunately for me, he seemed to have forgotten that I wasn't studying reproductive biology. It didn't last long after I caught him with another student. We talked about this and that while we ate our food and drank our wine. It was quite late when we arrived back at my apartment. I gave her my bed and made up the fold-up bunk for myself. I was just drifting off to sleep, having thoughts that I shouldn't have been having, when I heard her come into the room. She slipped into my bed. I know this because there's barely enough room for one, and snuggled against me. Are you asleep? So, I pretended to be asleep. Then her hand reached around me, and she grabbed me from behind. You've been having naughty thoughts about me, haven't you? What? No, never. I don't have those kinds of thoughts. Bullshit. You're just like every man I've known. Listen to the vastly experienced girl. How many men have you known? I presume you mean in the biblical sense, thousands? I'm not that kind of girl. The way that she was behaving suggested otherwise. I rolled over to face her. If I thought that she was beautiful fully clothed, she was even more beautiful fully unclothed. I just had to touch her and I did. We made love, and it was like heaven for me. Can I get some sleep now? She had headed to the bathroom to clean up before returning to drag me out of bed and back to my own bed. Isn't this more comfortable? Yeah, and much more dangerous. I don't feel in any danger, do you? Only of falling in love with you. Are you really falling in love with me? I think so. Is that going to be a problem? No, not to me. Mom might have a problem with that because I think that she fancies you. Please tell me that we're not here because of some sort of rivalry between you and your mother? Today was the first time and I don't know how long that breakfast was anything more than coffee and camels. It was Lucy, coffee and camels, and it put me in a good mood for the day ahead. A mood that wasn't about to last. My office door used to be a half-glass door with a sign on it that read, "Pretty Good Detective Agency," on the glass half. It used to have the good covered by a piece of paper. The one failing of half-glass doors is that if the glass is broken, as it is now, one has only to reach through the former glass panel to unlock the door. Once inside, it wasn't hard to access the filing cabinets, as long as you have a large Jimmy bar, which someone had, and rifle the files searching for something, which someone had done. If they were looking for my file on Andy Jones, then they were out of luck because, what with one thing or another, I hadn't yet begun to write up my notes. Well, that takes care of today's activities. I stood in the mess trying to decide where to begin. You get the coffee while I make a start, Lucy said as she began picking up papers off the floor and stacking them on the desk, ready to be sorted into the proper files. I was glad to get out of there even for a couple of minutes because filing was very low down on my list of priorities. Did you see Mr. Good? Maury asked as he poured the coffee. He stopped by looking for you. He didn't look very happy at all. No, I didn't see him, but he left his calling card. I must catch up with him and soon. I paid for today's coffee as well as last week's. The track winnings have certainly come in handy. My mind was turning over this latest development when my path up the stairs was blocked by, you guessed it, Nigel, and behind him, I could make out the diminutive form of Benny and the struggling form of Lucy. Before you decide to be a hero, Mr. Pretty, you should cast your eye on Miss Jones' side. I cast and saw a small silver-plated handgun. What do you want, Benny? I want to be brought up to date with your inquiries. It would appear that you have been somewhat remiss in your report writing. Is that why your tame gumshoe was ransacking my office? Yes, I sent him to check your progress with you, but he found nothing. That's because there was nothing to find. I'm no further on with my investigation than I was the last time we spoke. Now would you be so kind as to unhand the young lady? Very well, but I must warn you again that if you don't appraise me of your findings, I will be forced to harm this lovely thing. Or better yet, let Nigel have his way with her. He sounded as if he spent his spare time reading Mr. Webster's dictionary. As I stepped to one side to allow the large Nigel to pass me, he took a swing at me. His telegraph was working much better than his swing, and I was able to avoid colliding with his massive fist. Because he missed me, it threw him off balance, and when I shoved my foot across his path, he fell, tumbling down the stairs and crashing against the wall of the landing, loosening lumps of wall plaster that crashed onto his head, giving him a bad case of dandruff. Most impressive, Mr. Pretty. I trust that you will not attempt the same maneuver with me, otherwise my finger might just tighten on this trigger with unfortunate consequences for Miss Jones, and you wouldn't want that, would you? And I trust that you will not contemplate harming the future Mrs. Pretty, or I might just get a little peeved, if you get my drift. I think we understand each other, Mr. Pretty. I hope so, and while we are in this cooperative frame of mind, would you pass a message on to my former partner for me? Would you tell him that the next time he even thinks about trashing my office, I'll do more than have the police demolish his car? I'll pass on your message, although he is still angry with you. He shoved the gun into the inside pocket of his snappy coat and walked down the stairs, stepping over the still prone form of Nigel. Come, Nigel, I don't pay you to lie around all day. Nigel grumbled to his feet and ambled after his boss. What do you mean the future, Mrs. Pretty? Lucy was having a hard time hiding her disgust as she sipped her coffee. I didn't know whether her disgust was for my statement or the coffee. Do you mean to tell me that you're not thrilled at the prospect of life with yours truly? I didn't say that, it's just that this is so sudden. You've given me no time to think about whether I want this or not. How much more time do you need? My patience isn't inexhaustible, you know. I need a couple of days to think this through. Oh, don't worry, it isn't you that I'm worried about. It's your lifestyle and the people that you meet and, it appears, offend on a regular basis. She came and sat on my desk again, with her stocking-clad legs dangerously close to my hand. The filing and detecting can wait. I stopped by the bar to update Laura Lee on my progress, or lack thereof. To keep up appearances, Lucy had left the office earlier than I did, and was serving behind the bar. Look after things for me, Lucy. I need to talk to Jerry. Sure thing, Ma. She gave me a wink from behind her mother's back. We went into the storeroom out back that served as her office. Lucy tells me that you've upset some people. If you mean Benny, it goes with the job. I shove, and he shoves back. No one is really hurt, and he feeds me tidbits, and I feed him some as well. I have fun with his goon Nigel, and at the moment I think I'm 2 for 1. I don't want you getting yourself hurt, or worse still dead because of Andy. He's not worth it. Do you know anything new? Things are slowly falling into some sort of shape. I actually suspect that he may still be alive and holed up somewhere. He may even be contemplating some sort of insurance scam. What sort of scam? He doesn't have insurance, at least none that I know of. I'll run some checks with the insurance companies tomorrow, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if I discovered a policy. How are you and Lucy getting along? She's not making a nuisance of herself, is she? Far from it. She's been a great help. I caught the way that she's been looking at you. I think that she's falling for you, and I need to warn you to be careful. I had to ship her interstate to college because she was attracting attention from the wrong kind of guys. Rough types, and I want more for her than I ever got. She had that look in her eyes that told me that, while she loved Lucy, she regretted falling pregnant and having to marry so very young. Don't worry, I think that I can handle her. Don't say I didn't warn you. I'd better be getting back. Can you make sure that she gets back to the why okay? There was something strange going on here. Either one or both of them have been lying to me. Lucy told me that she had chosen an interstate college to get away from her mother, while Laura Lee had just told me that she had shipped Lucy off to get her away from the attention of the local lowlife. Tomorrow I will have to ditch Lucy for a while because there was something that I had to check on and I don't want her around while I do. But for now I have to make sure she gets back to the why. Haha. While the night with Lucy was very enjoyable and I was caught deeper and deeper by her sexual attraction, I managed to convince her that I had to drag myself away from her for a couple of hours while I undertook some tedious legwork. I peeled a couple of notes from my roll, handed them to her, and told her to see a movie or go shopping or something, and that I'd see her for lunch at the bar and grill on the next block from the office. I wasn't kidding when I told her that it was dull and boring. I spent the best part of 2 hours traipsing around town spinning yarns to insurance companies about trying to trace one of their clients so that I could forward a large sum of money to him. When I tracked down his policy, the clerk was most obliging and turned his back while I made a note of Andy's address. If he saw me writing further details, he didn't show it. I thank him for his kindness and left. This was getting more interesting by the minute. There was a recent change of address noted along with account details. Using the clerk's name, I rang Andy's bank, telling the clerk that answered that I was inquiring about a notice that the company had received that there were insufficient funds to cover his previous premium payments, and could they rectify this problem. Oh, I don't see how that could be possible, sir. Mr. Jones' account has more than enough money to meet any premium deductions. Wait a minute, I'm sorry. It wasn't Mr. Jones' policy that hadn't received payment. It was his daughter, Lucy. That is equally strange. Her account has a considerable amount in it. While I can't divulge the amount, I can assure you that it is a very healthy balance. Thank you for your assistance. I'll have to go back through our fund transfer procedures and find out where the problem lies. It must be with our system. Now I was beginning to work out what the scams were that they were pulling. Firstly, there was the one involving Benny the bookie. Here he was running around the city like Shylock looking for his pound of flesh, while Andy, if he owed anything at all, had more than enough to cover his losses. Could it be possible that Andy had been far too successful of late with his race selections, and Benny owed him money and saw the way out would be to eliminate Andy? Could Andy have perfected a betting system that could beat the bookies? Could it be that knowledge of the existence of such a system would have all the bookies running scared and desperate to stop it spreading, and they were all spreading the word that he owed them money to cover up the opposite? If this was the case, then Andy was a marked man. Then there was the insurance scam. If he had been reported missing and the word around the traps was that he owed the bookies a lot of money, then a John Doe corpse that fitted his general description, preferable without a head full of teeth, could be passed off as Andy, and his insurance policies would be paid out to the beneficiaries, and they were Laura Lee and Lucy. Lack of an identifiable body would mean a wait of 7 years before he could be legally declared dead. An identifiable body had the added benefit that, if it could be proven that Tony had been involved in disposing of the body and that Benny had ordered the hit, then the police would get Benny for murder and Tony as an accessory, something that would please me no end. It was still some time before I was due to meet Lucy, and I was sitting at my desk poring over the copious notes that I had written in my notebook when she came in with a couple of small shopping bags in her hand. She came round to my side of the desk and kissed me. "I have a surprise for you, but you'll have to wait until tonight to see it." She sat on top of my notes. "What have you discovered while I was out shopping?" "Not a lot of any use. I don't think we'll be able to prove anything without a body, and none has been forthcoming. Very inconsiderate of people, don't you think?" "Did you? Or did you not promise me lunch?" "I did. Let us away to find a feedback." I walked to the framed certificate that told the world that I was once a member in good standing of the police force, pushed it aside, dialed up a number on my safe, and shoved my notes inside. Closing it, I took her hand and we left. Josie was behind the bar as we walked in. "Hi, stranger. Long time no see, and I know why. What'll it be?" "Now don't get jealous on me, kid." "Kid? She's the kid. Is she old enough to come into this joint?" "She doesn't look a day over 13. "She's plenty old enough. We'll have a beer each and one of your T-bones. Mine rare as usual, and Lucy will have hers." I looked at Lucy, who nodded to me, "Rare too." "Okay, lover. Coming up? Take a seat and I'll bring the beers over straight away." We sat in a booth and sipped our beers. "Tell me, Lucy, what are you studying in college?" "Mathematics. Why?" "I know so little about you, and if we're going to get married, I should at least know something about you." "It's all pretty boring, really. Not too many people are interested in math as a career." "I'm interested. What part of math interests you?" She was saved from answering by the arrival of our steaks, huge, succulent slabs of rare beef, all but covering the plates, with a pile of fries hanging desperately to the side. Lucy cut a piece of beef and forked it into her mouth. Chewing on it occupied a couple of minutes before she attacked the rest of it. Neither of us spoke until the plates were clean. "Wow, that was some meal. Now I know why you come here." Here I was thinking that it was just the help, and that we'd have to gnaw our way through meat so tough that it could be used for shoe leather washed down with some weak brew. How wrong I was. Would I take you to a joint like that? I'm offended by the suggestion. Enough small talk. We have work to do. I got up from the booth and peeled off enough money to cover the meal, and then some, and we left. Josie didn't help matters by blowing me a kiss as I opened the door for Lucy. Calloway was waiting for me back at my office. "It looks as if we may have discovered the late Andy Jones. A floater was pulled from the river this morning. The body had been in the river for a while, and we couldn't get enough blood from him to match it to Andy's blood type, but what clothes the body was wearing matched those he was reported to have been wearing when he disappeared. The only thing that we don't have is an intact head." "Do you mean the body was decapitated?" "No, but there wasn't enough left to enable us to positively identify it. Laura Lee said that she was 90% certain that it was her late lamented husband, and if the coroner agrees with her, I guess that we can start looking for whoever it was that did this." "Do you still think that Benny is the main suspect?" "Yep. Your ex-partner, in response to a little pressure, has agreed to sing. He has told us of getting instructions from Benny telling him to drive to a location where there would be a package waiting for pickup. He has given us the pickup point, a warehouse owned by guess who? Benny the bookie." "Correct, where the package was waiting for him, along with an envelope with the agreed fee and instructions as to where to dispose of the package. He didn't look to see what was in the package, but he did tell us that it was large, and when pressed he admitted that it could have been the body of the late lamented Andy Jones. It's still pretty flimsy evidence, and who's to say that Tony won't change his tune at Benny's trial?" What we're hoping will happen is that Benny, knowing that we have taken an interest in Tony, will want to make sure that he does change his mind, and in his usual subtle manner that will mean handing him over to Nigel. If Tony survives that, chances are that he won't be able to talk. We will have Tony watched at all times, and when the move is made we'll be there with the cavalry to arrest him. And Tony let you do this? I personally couldn't see him doing that. Oh, he doesn't know about it. If he did, do you think that still be in town? He left me deep in thought. Did I hate Tony enough to hope that the cavalry arrives too late to stop Nigel doing a pas de cheval on his face? Or do I take pity on him and warn him of his impending doom? Pas de cheval won out. I found that I couldn't muster up enough affection for the miserable man to intervene. Lucy had sat through all of this in silence, which I found unusual. What are we going to do? Are we going to warn Tony? What do you think? I think that we should go see your mother to see how she's coping with her grief. Are you suggesting that mother is going to lose sleep over the news? She's probably serving free beer to the crowd. It wasn't quite like that, but there were a lot of commiserations being thrown around the bar. Hi, you two. You've obviously heard the good news. Have a drink on the house. She poured both of us a hefty slug of the good stuff. Lucy, could you look after the bar for a while? I want to have a chat to Jerry. Lucy went behind the bar and started refilling glasses. Laura Lee and I went out the back door to the storeroom office. Jerry, it looks as if Andy isn't coming back anytime soon, so I suppose that your work is finished and you want your payment. Not so fast. We should wait for the coroner to finish his report before we go off and spend our money. You get your insurance payout and me my fee. There's something bothering me. A few things that don't ring true about this whole case. What do you mean? Surely you don't think that he's still alive, do you? Nah, nothing like that. I just have this feeling that all isn't as it seems, but I can't put my finger on it. Whatever. But thank you for what you've done. I appreciate it. By way of showing her appreciation, her hand looped behind my head and drew my face to hers, her lips covering mine. Mother was a better kisser than daughter. Maybe she had more experience at it. She moved her lips from mine and whispered to me, Lucy isn't staying at the Y, is she? Her hand grabbing my crotch prevented me from lying to her. No, she's been staying with me to save money. Is that the only reason? Her grip tightened. No. I managed to tell her in an almost falsetto voice. I should rip these off, but I won't if you make me a promise. Which is? That you don't hurt my baby girl ever. I hate to tell you this, but she hasn't been a baby for a long time. Her grip tightened even more, and if I didn't give her the answer she wanted, and soon I would be no use to any woman. Okay, I promise. The relief was amazing. This was one tough lady. Come on, lover. We'd better be getting back to the bar, or she'll be thinking that you've been screwing me. Not that the prospect doesn't hold some attraction. This woman was making it obvious that her interest in me wasn't purely commercial, and I suppose that I could do worse. Much later, I was sitting on my bed when Lucy emerged from the bathroom. Her surprise was a see-through negligee that left nothing to the imagination. While I appreciated the vision, this wasn't to be the evening that I'd anticipated. It should have been a night of carnal bliss, but she had become somewhat subdued in bed. She seemed almost reluctant to let me make love to her, although she did let herself go late in the process. What's bothering you? You haven't been yourself all evening. Oh, darling. I have to go back to college soon. Too soon. Tomorrow, in fact. I spoke to my professor while you and Mother were out back, talking, last night. The way that she emphasized the word talking meant that she was sure that we were doing more than that. And he told that if I don't return very soon, I'll be too far behind in my coursework. Well, if you have to go, you have to go. I won't stop you, even though it will leave a huge hole in my heart. If I was an actor, I would have shed a couple of tears about now, just to make her feel bad about walking out on me. But I'll be back at the end of the semester, and we can take up where we left off. That is if you want that. I held her face in my hands and whispered to her, I want nothing more than that. It was with sadness that we blew kisses to each other over the ever-widening gap between us as the Greyhound pulled away from the bus station. Through the sadness, that uneasy feeling returned and I had work to do. Calloway was putting the finishing touches to his report to the coroner when I emerged from the gauntlet of wisecracks from the cops. Hi, Lou. How is the case going? Just about got it wrapped up. We got your friend Nigel for playing bongos on Tony's skull, and Benny was sitting there watching and pleading with your ex to stop screaming. He's pleading innocence, of course. He claims that he accompanied Nigel on a visit to his cousin who he would have us believe was your former partner, one Tony Good. It would seem that Tony was not in a talking mood and tried to push Nigel out of his apartment. Nigel was showing his affection when we rolled up. When we told Benny that Nigel doesn't have a cousin, let alone one living in the same apartment building as Tony, he was astonished that Nigel, who he had come to trust totally, should have lied to him. Anyway, his lawyer posted bail for the both of them while they tried to arrange the usual alibi. Tony's in hospital and will be for some time. We were sadly a little tardy in coming to the rescue, and we feel awful about that. By the way, where's your new assistant? She had to go back to college. I think I might drive down on the weekend to visit her. You sound as if you've fallen for her. You could say that. I wasn't about to tell him or anyone else that the visit was more than me missing Lucy. It was my gut telling me that I needed to see her, but I couldn't explain why. I went back to my office via the track. Tell me, Sophie, the other day you told me that if I was in Andy's position, Mexico held a certain attraction. Could it be that instead of him owing the bookies money, the opposite was the case, and that they owed him money and they suspect that he was doing something not entirely legal? You're not just a dumb Seamus, are you, Jerry? The word is that he has devised a system to beat the odds and has become too successful for his own good, not to mention for their financial livelihood. So there seems to be some sort of contest to see who gets to him first. It would seem as if Benny has one. I didn't mention to her that I had a feeling that all wasn't as it seemed. A bleary-eyed brunette leaned against the dorm room door. Who are you and what do you want? My name is Jerry and I've come to talk to Lucy Jones. Is she here? You're about 2 months too late. She dropped out of college around then and moved out. If I was the dumb Seamus that people expected, this should have been my first shock, along with finding that Lucy had lied about having to return to college to catch up on her coursework, then to find that she had dropped out of college some weeks ago and that she was no longer living in the dorm. Her former roommate told me where she was living now, and that led me to the crashing sound of the next piece of the puzzle falling into place. I was sitting in a cab that was parked in a leafy suburban street opposite one of those picture postcard cottages you see in real estate brochures when she walked out of the front door and turned into the arms of a man. Her kiss was that of a lover, and the position of her hand at the front of his trousers confirmed that it was in no way platonic. She left carrying a small hold all, and the door closed behind her. I caught a brief glimpse of the man, and the puzzle was now complete, so I told the cabbie to wait and walked up to the door and leant on the bell push. The door opened a crack, and I shoved my foot in the crack. Hi, Andy. You're looking very sprightly for a dead man. Who are you, and what do you want? I'm Jerry Pretty, the poor schmuck that your wife hired to find you. Dead or alive, she didn't much care which. I guess that I found you. What do you want? You already asked that. What I want is some answers, like whose idea was it for Lucy to latch onto me to make sure that I looked in the right places for clues and made sure that I didn't get too close? Was it yours? No, it was Lucy's. What is she to you? And don't try to tell me that she's just your daughter. The kiss and parting I witnessed just now tells me otherwise. You're right, she isn't just my daughter. In fact, she isn't my daughter at all. I'm just someone who Laura Lee married to legitimize Lucy's birth. It was an inconvenient marriage of convenience, and there was never any love between us. She seemed to have been upset that you were spreading it around. I think I just embarrassed her because it looked like she couldn't hold her man. Then why did you do it? It was all part of the plan. What plan? I guess that I'd better explain everything. Lucy has used her math skills and turned it to betting on the horses, and before you say that it's a mug's game that no one can win, she has turned it into the science of probability theory. It involves calculating odds and working out which horses will make a reasonable payout, whether it's a win or show result. Sometimes the odds are such that we don't bet on a race, while at other times we will back more than one horse. Does this theory take into account that horses are sometimes pulled, or that their performance is chemically altered? Sure. We study the form and the track work figures. If we see that a horse has run better in track work than recent race results would indicate, we reason that it's being held back to win big in a big race. And if the odds on a horse are better than indicated by training track performance, and there is money on it at the track, then we know that its race performance will be boosted. My mind went back to the day at the track with Lucy and how she seemed to know so little about what went on. Then, tell me, why did you have to go through this whole charade about you going missing and the convenient discovery of your body? I couldn't just disappear. For this to work, I had to turn up dead. Whose body was it, by the way? Some bum from Skid Row who got beaten to death for stealing a bottle of hooch from another bum. When the bum and his friends had finished with him, he was perfect for what we needed. So we wrapped him up and dumped him in Benny's old warehouse. We then contacted your former partner and told him that Benny wanted him to pick it up and dispose of it in the river. We had asked around and knew that he would be so desperate for money that he wouldn't ask any questions. And then we spread the word so that Benny would hear that I had been disposed of and by whom. Lucy suggested to Laura Lee that she should hire you to look for me. I take it she hoped that I'd fail? Yes, it was. It was our plan that you'd fail. But in the process of failing, you would make enough noise and point the police in the right direction so that they would find the body. It's just that the body they found wasn't mine. So Lucy was right when she told me that she thought that Benny could have been taking credit for the hit to improve his image. because she had already worked that out. Yeah, she's one smart cookie. I would be proud of her if she really was my daughter. How long have you been lovers? Over a year now. I think that she figured it out that I wasn't her real father, and she was feeling sorry for the way that I had to jump to Laura Lee's every whim. What are you going to do now that you know that I'm still alive? Nothing. I suppose that you could say that I'm an old softy at heart, but I see no reason to stir up a can of worms now that everyone seems to have gotten what they deserve. Except you, maybe? Forget about me. I don't count. You and Lucy have managed to beat the system, so I guess you deserve what success you make of this. Lucy and Laura Lee both benefit from your insurance policy, so they're a winner there. Benny deserves everything that he gets, hopefully, from the cops, while Tony has already gotten his just reward. As for me, I think that I can still come out on top. One word of advice before I leave the two of you to enjoy each other, and that is get out of town. Out of the country would be better, and soon, before Benny hears that you could be still alive and tries to find you. Officially, you're dead, and believe me, you're better off dead. We were planning to leave soon anyway. We hear that there are races every day in England. Okay, I'm off to break the amended version of what has happened to Laura Lee. Give my love to Lucy. I will. I hope that you enjoyed her. I had nothing polite to say to that. I had the answers I was looking for, and all that remained was to pass the message on. The wind blustered through the man-made canyons of the city, driving the morose rain before it, soaking the cuffs of my trousers. The reflection of the sad street light struggled out of a muddy puddle in the road. As I trudged this soggy street, the same bedraggled cat hissed at my feet from the soggy pile of cardboard that still littered the sidewalk. This was 5th Street, not 5th Avenue, and 2 in the morning isn't a good time to be here unless. In the distance, a trumpet wailed its sorrow into the night. I didn't need the note to tell me to follow that sound. I turned right into an even more depressing laneway, and the trumpet was joined by a bass, drums, guitar, and piano. What I could hear of the notes that fought their way to my ears through the other night sounds. The band wasn't half bad. A flickering red neon led me to a bar at the very end of the lane. Pushing the door open, I entered a world of smoke, of beer smells, and the sounds of despair. The trumpet player laid down his instrument and began to sing in a voice that told of too many cigarettes, too much bad whiskey, and too much sadness. The raw emotion rode through his music like the freight train that he rode away from the hard times in New Orleans or Chicago, and the small crowd sat in rapt silence while he sang. I sat at the bar, and Laura Lee reached under it for a bottle of her special whiskey, poured a generous one for each of us, and came over to me. What news have you got for me? I have either good news or bad news, you decide. I couldn't think of a gentle way to break the news to her, so I came straight out with it. What does it feel like to be a widow? You mean? That's right, babe, he's very dead. I know who did it, and the police will probably even have enough to convict Benny over it. That's great. I know this sounds callous, but I'm not sad that he's dead. He was a worthless scum living, so he can't be any more worthless dead. I had a look at his insurance policy, and there's a large amount of money coming my way. Enough to pay off what's owing on this joint, leaving me with a little funny money just for myself. I might even be able to hire someone to look after the joint while I take a vacation. Well, it seems like a satisfactory result, and I guess I have another satisfied customer. Are you? Satisfied, I mean. As satisfied as I can be under the circumstances. Stick around. I would like to pay you tonight. I stuck around. We were in her office. She gave me a wad of notes that was more than I was going to charge her. Now, I'll give you your bonus. She came into my arms and kissed me hard on the lips. I hadn't realized that I needed this sex so bad. Lucy was good, but she didn't match the strength and urgency of her mother, and that had me wanting Laura Lee more than I ever imagined. I did her on the desk. Laying back and enjoying a post-sex camel, she rested her head on my shoulder and exhaled a cloud of smoke towards the ceiling. Here I was thinking that I would give you a bonus by letting you screw me, but it was me that got the bonus. We, stud, are going to have to keep this up until you catch up to me. Like I said, I'm an obedient kind of guy, so I agreed with her that we should keep this going. It was some vacation we had, and Laura Lee tells me that I still haven't caught up. I've closed my old office and opened a new one in the storeroom in back of the bar, and we've got one of those gizmos with switches set up behind the bar that Laura Lee flicks when a client comes in or when she's not busy and just wants to talk sexy to me. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.